and then I'll go and get into Canvas and get going. I had some problems on this end with the screen here, so what I have to do is go in and get everybody set up. So I do appreciate it. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you there. And I'll get over here into Canvas for a moment and get logged in. I had to deal with the inevitable technical difficulties that occur sometimes, but that's okay. We'll get through it. And my apologies about us getting started a few minutes late here. Okay. Now, what you'll want to do is mute your machine. Okay. As you can tell, I'm having all kinds of fun tonight. Oh, there we go. And then I'll get over here to, here we go. There we are. Thank you for your patience, and I'm a minute early. That's good. I just want to go around the horn. I'm going to take a look and see who all I have. I have three of us here, and I see Taylor and Michelle. Glad to see you both here. And if you would go ahead and mute your computer, mute your machine, so we don't hear your dog bark or anything like that. And then if I want to ask a question or something, I'll unmute it. As I'd said before, I was recording this, and I want to make sure that, yes, I am. I'm going to record this session tonight. We're going to go a couple of hours, and then I'll record a supplemental lab session and then another supplemental lecture. I know it's the 4th of July, and that's why I'm recording this, so that people don't absolutely totally have to be here. Now, we're in week 5, and let me scroll myself down here, and we'll talk about where we're going to go from here. And we have a couple of little bit of housekeeping I want to go, and this is, of course, Monday the 3rd. I want to make sure that everybody is on board right now with your group software project. I've seen the discussion boards, and I get reports of people logging in and so forth, so it looks like you're going, everybody's coming together. Let me go up here for a moment to this area, this section called the syllabus. And again, this is just kind of a thing in terms of navigating, and this will show you the summary of what's due. And of course, those the group software projects are due on Monday the 17th, so they're due from 2 weeks today. And I've posted instructions on how to do them and so forth. So I'll be looking forward to seeing them. Now, I'm going to back up also into the files, and we're going to work on a couple of case. I believe it's case 19. I think that's the one, and I want to take a look here for just a second. I think it's the one we did. Case 20, which is elusive moose. Yeah, we're going to do case 19. Will be the access case that we're going to work on. Excuse me, and that's the case that's known as second time around movies. Now, I think it's pretty obvious, why I'm using this, but also because it will do some more work for us in terms of making sure that we understand tables and queries. If you get that, the rest of it all falls into place, and we'll have some files that we'll be working with tonight, and there are going to be four. There are going to be this file movie 4, which is a database. Then the movie 4 information storage solutions. That's and we'll look at that in the case. And then the year-to-date solution. And so I'll cover that briefly tonight. And then in the supplemental lab, we'll go through some more. Now, I've already told you what you need to upload in terms of the 6th, which is this July the 6th, which would be the Thursday, and the 3 files from Elusive Moose to upload here, and then the file, and then the file that you'll want to upload. I have you've got the case follow-up. Yeah, it would be here on the 20th that we would upload the file, one of the files from this case 19 that we're going to take a look at tonight. Okay, I know it's a little bit of a fluid proposition, so I want to keep everybody informed. It just depends on how I think that we're doing, and it's kind of a sense of what I think we may need. I want to go back for a moment into the modules section. That's where we have everything divided up by time. You'll notice that the navigation really on the left takes you to the major parts. And we're here on the 3rd tonight of July, and I do appreciate those of you who are here, and I know other folks, you know, it's a holiday, so I really didn't expect that many people to be here, so I do appreciate those of you who are here. I have I have some resources that I want to make sure that I encourage you to take a look at. Here is one that's an introduction to recommendation engines. You've heard me talk about those, especially within the context of what they do over at Amazon. And the same thing, and here's another resource on those. Here's a resource on dealing with snowflake schema versus star schema. And we've been basically working with the star schema, which is the prevalent type, or as we talked about before, we have a table, okay, that's connected to, we have a fact table that is really a list of transactions or a list of records that we feed through a series of dimension tables. And we talked about that some last week. Then, of course, you've got these case follow-ups that we're due today. And then again on the 6th, here are the three files you'll upload from Elusive Moose. Now, the case 19, and we'll just talk about it for a second, it's called a Second Time Around Movies, and it deals with a lot of the same kind of fundamental things that we did in Elusive Moose, building a table, writing queries, running reports, that type of thing. Before I do that, though, I want to go back up here and I want to find a resource. If you haven't been using it, I really want to encourage you to use it. And this is the OBU online library. And I have a link here to the online library, and their the OBU online library and their business resources. And this is right up here in that OBU professional resources. And you'll see that. You're seeing some stuff tonight because I'm not in student mode. And so you're going to see some stuff here that looks, you go, where'd that come from? Well, it's because it's stuff I've got that's hidden from you. But here's the link, and I'm going to click it. Okay, and tell us, of course, we're going to an outside link. And we'll come over here, and there's usually someone over here to chat. And I don't know if they have anybody tonight, but usually during business hours, I think their business hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. They have someone there and who can give you some help in terms of what's there in the OBU library for business sources. Now, maybe you've had an instructor who's told you about that before. Maybe you've talked about it. I hope so. If not, don't forget to, and let me say this, the people at the library are always delighted to help out. So you can always schedule an appointment to chat with someone. You can email them. You've got a phone number to contact them. They're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Goodreads. And so you certainly don't neglect that resource. It's there, all types of information as you can see. And I wanted to make sure that I let you know. Now, this shows you the books and resources they've got. They've got all of the major journals. They've got some information here for the graduate leadership program, and then some help on finding specific articles. And again, if you have any problems using it during regular business hours, usually 8 to 6, I think sometimes somebody till 8 p.m. I doubt if there's anyone there tonight. they have a chat agent who will come up and who'll visit with you. So I wanted to make sure that you took a look at that resource, and certainly it's something that you want to take advantage of because it's there for you. You pay for it, and you do need to make sure that you take advantage of that resource. So it's there. And let's go back here to the modules. And again, what I've really started to do is to focus us in a little bit on database development. Now, this week, and let me pop down over here to week 5. You had some work to do. One of them was I gave you a choice in terms of case follow-ups, and any one of the cases from chapter 4 through 6. Now, I typically just go through these and look at them a little bit. I don't try to correct spelling or anything like that, because we do have a session, which is session 7, where I'll pull some of these up and we'll take a look at them. We'll talk about them. So again, as I've said before, make them like a memo. Answer the questions that I ask you to answer there in the instructions, and we're good to go. Because I'm more interested in finding out what you might have learned in the follow-up. I can read the case. I've read it 1,000 times. I know it's there. I'm just interested in what you saw. And I also have quizzes on these cases. So you get the factual data from those, and I'm interested in seeing how you did. Now, I'm going to grab the Perelson text for just a second, because I just want to talk very quickly about the broad brush stroke that Perelson's covering. And if you've got your Perelson book, it's the one that's the small book. It's the one that's got kind of it's got the managing and using information systems, a strategic approach. And I'm just going to basically pop over here, and really what they try to do there in chapters 4 through 6 is talk about the implementation of information technology as a strategic tool. And they start with the overlay of using the business diamond, and then they walk you through the Porter model and the 5 forces, and then they go further on into information architecture and infrastructure, the differences between the two of those, and how all of this changes work, and how it changes work patterns, and how those play themselves out in a company. And we've seen this before. We know that the technologies that when companies and organizations in general interact with technologies, it changes them forever. I'm going to give you a really good example. Is at the turn of the century, the technology that got discovered was basically the production line. And that was a Ford, when he introduced the production line, the notion that we take a task and break it down to parts. We have specialists who deal with every part, who work on a line. And so one piece of the car goes down the line and it's progressively put together was a revolutionary thing. And that drove how that company got organized, because we started to see, we'd seen it some already, but we really saw the rise of functions: accounting, general management, production, and marketing. Now, later in the 1930s, really in the 40s, really more in the 1950s, about 20 to 25 years later, we saw another change. And that is when we saw the ability to do mass production, but to customize it. And this is the very first instances where we had the people at General Motors are really the people. Alfred Sloan is really the one who pioneered this. He said, if I can make a chassis that will fit a Chevrolet and a Buick and a Cadillac, which was their three main staple products, then I've got something I can really work through in terms of the manufacturing processes. But since I'm selling a Chevy, which is a different type of car, a Buick versus a Cadillac, I really need a different marketing thrust, and I really need a different product group. And so the notion of product groups came about at about the same time. This occurred with Procter and Gamble, with the ability to, in changes in the food industry and food technologies, the ability in preservatives, their ability to package things, to batch produce large amounts of cereal and all the stuff that we buy from on the shelves. And so those technologies shaped how companies got organized. Now, at the end of all of this is this, and the authors in the text talk about this, is this notion of an instant organization. In other words, a firm that, an organization that responds to customers instantly, knows what's going on instantly, is extremely agile, etc. And to a certain extent, that's possible if you're dealing with certain types of goods, but in other ways, you're just simply not. Now, we've seen all this play itself out also. And another one of those where we've seen a technology, and it's close to digital technology, was the changes that came about in the movie industry. Back at the turn of the 20th century, the movie industry was really a hodgepodge and collection of companies all over the world, and they basically made what we call silent films. They had no way to record sound, and then when technology started to develop on the recording of sound, it really began to change how movies were made. It began to change how the talent was handled. They had to not only be able to act and be expressive, but they also had to be able to they sound good. And so we started to see these technologies change how people approached making movies. At the same time, Hollywood discovered the production model, and that's when you saw the rise of the big movie production companies, United Artists, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, all of those big names that you associate typically with what we would call classic movies. They are basically were making movies on an industrial scale. And they did that because they had the technologies to do so. So technology, as I said before, is the type of thing that sneaks up on us, and it really changes how we do business. And today, what we're seeing is, I think, two very, very significant trends or sea changes that are occurring. One of them is the advent of the cloud, the ability to store things on an incredible level and to access data on an incredible level. Now, the data warehouse, okay, is an example of that type of approach and that type of technology. And we wouldn't be able to utilize databases, data warehouses, recommendation engines, these incredible kinds of maps we can get, the kinds of things we can see, if we didn't have the technology that allowed us to do it. And at its heart, there are two technologies that are working there. One is what we call one of them is the ability to match up the space in a computer, what we would call, I guess, correlated data is the term that's used. And what they really mean is I create a table, okay, and I create a query engine that can link me right to that table. But one of the magical things that make these such a powerful tool, and how they're just changing everything, is the fact that when I run a query, I get a result set. I get a thing called a view. The data there have not been changed unless I have the permission to go change the data table. So I'm able to take that table and look at it in as many ways as I've got fields and records to really get down to it. Yeah, and you almost have to think of it like this kaleidoscope. So we have yet to really see how this is going to play itself out. And now that we've married that with high-speed computers and ubiquitous devices, stuff people carry around with them, stuff embedded in their cars and their products, we're really seeing this change where companies where a firm's business is really handled in completely different ways than we can even anticipate. Now, ultimately, if you're selling a product, you've got to get it to somebody. But logistics is another one of those things, for example, with the cloud, where we can link supply chains together and we can get stuff to people. We can track it. We've all bought stuff and had things tracked. And you know, it's in Dallas. It's just got delivered to Oklahoma City. It'll be by your house at 6 o'clock. That's, for many of my students, my undergraduate students, that they just take that for granted. And I tell them that's a miracle. You just don't understand. Or if you walk into, for example, a Walmart, and think about how that's changed in a grocery store. My father owned a grocery store downtown Oklahoma City at the turn of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century. People would come up to the he had a little opening there, a little door, and people come up and say, I need 5 pounds of sugar and 3 pounds of flour and whatever vegetables you've got. And he'd basically put all the stuff in a box, and they'd either buy it on a charge, if they had a charge account, or they'd pay him the money. But he didn't carry 25 or 30,000 products. There was no way. When you walk into a Walmart today, or any large department store, but certainly a Walmart, you're looking at an incredible, really you're looking at a database for all intents and purposes. So I can't emphasize enough to you how those chapters 4 through 6 talk about how this technology has changed how we do business and how we interact with things. And we haven't even come to grips with what we're going to do with all of these robots, these forms of artificial intelligence that we've developed. We're still in that process of trying to work it out. And we're still in that process of trying to work out, how do we handle a virtual organization? I might have shared with you, I worked for a university that was 100% online. I had faculty and students all over the world in every single time zone. I had faculty who were in every continent. And so we had to be mindful of the fact that we were dealing with a lot of different time zones, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different settings. But it was incredible because of the talent that we could bring to bear. So the students who went through a dissertation experience with me, they might have 2 or 3 faculty members from some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. But we were only able to do that because I didn't have to go to somebody and say, you're going to have to leave Cambridge and move to Prescott, Arizona. We'll just plug you into the system and away we go. So that's important for you to see how that changes. And the advent of social media also is one of those where we're seeing the formation of the use of work groups. We're seeing the formation and the work and the development of what we would call learning communities or work communities. And these might be people from all realms of the organization, because so much today is so very project oriented. So we often get so many people from different specializations. So I want to make sure that you saw that and understood it. And like I said, on week 7, one of my intents is to go back and take a look at some of these case follow-ups and talk about them. And so again, don't get nervous about them being all that formal or anything like that. I'm more interested in what you saw or what perception you got. And usually, and I'm also very interested in why you chose a particular case. So I don't want you to get too crazy about that. Now, tonight, we're gonna take a look at a second access case, okay? And this one is in the Miller book, the big one. And this is case 19. It starts over on page 138, okay? Now, when I've chosen these cases, these access cases, I've chosen them for a reason. The main reason is that I've selected cases that really focus you in on building tables that are the heart of any database, and on building queries, which are the way that we extract the data that we want to get out of them. It's really interesting, and I think I sent all of you a link about it right now. I'm taking a course online. I'm doing one of these MOOCs, massively open online course, and I'm taking it through Canvas, and it's put on by Ball State University, their film department, and Turner Classic Movies. And it's interesting as I watched that here is a course, and the course is about the films of Alfred Hitchcock. And I think here's an interesting thing where his movies, okay, are now a course. So we're studying them, like, and they have the two people that they have around the course are just outstanding film critics. And it's really fascinating because we see they'll give us little video clips and bits to look at, and we respond and react to them. And so it's interesting to see how that technology. Alfred Hitchcock would have had no idea, and there were probably by the end of the course will probably be as many people who've seen his early movies, at least his silent movies. More people probably will see them than they ever did when he had them as a feature length, when he ran them back in the 1920s and in the 1920s and some into the 1930s, because he kind of spanned the silent era up to the 1960s. Well, enough of that again, and you can read faster than I can talk, but I really hope you'll dig into chapter 4, because there's a lot of meat there in terms of how technology works. And one of my strong beliefs is this: it sneaks up on us. It just kind of happens. And then suddenly we realize all of the ways we work have completely changed. The ways that we interact have completely changed, and the ways that we do business. And this is it's permeated into every function of a business, whether you're talking about management, or you're talking about the financial aspects of running a company, whether you talk about marketing or production. Those functional specialties are really, really changing things and changing how people organize themselves and how they go after talent and so forth. So it's some interesting stuff there. And I think particularly, I would really encourage you to take a look at those links on the recommendation engines, because those are exceptionally powerful. And here's the thing: a recommendation engine, okay, is a very unique type of data base, because you feed it, okay? Most of the time when we have a database, we feed the database, that is, we fill up tables with records, et cetera, because we have transactions that have happened. And those are usually transactions between us and a customer, or maybe us and say in supply chain, one of our suppliers. And so there's that the size of the database has to grow in order to be more and more effective. It's just simply a matter, and that's why storage is so important. So when we look at these cases and we talk about the types of data that we're working with, okay, then we have to be thoughtful about that, because when you start to get to about 50 to 100,000 records, it starts to become real money. And storage costs are exceptionally high until you get them back out to scale. But a recommendation engine is one of these unique critters where you feed the database. This is much like Facebook. Twitter would be another one of those that's really a recommendation engine, where you're just kind of feeding the thing, and it just collects what you say and what you like and what you linked and what you watched and who you're friending and all of that stuff. And the database is just sitting there very passively, okay? And you're the one completing everything. And typically they're not transactions, okay? And that's one of the interesting things that we're seeing is that we're able, marketers in real time can scrape data, say out of Facebook. They can scrape data out of Twitter and get an idea of how people are responding to their product outside of the being in a showroom or being at the website or whatever. And so this is giving them some very interesting insights, because they're really able to see how customers truly feel or respond. And we haven't even begun to talk about the use of locational data. But again, I'd say if you really want to see probably an incredibly powerful database, if you're a marketing person, if you're not plugged into Esri and Esri Tapestry, and what you could do with utilizing mapping. Uh, you need to find out, and they have some great courses that you can take with them. And Esri Tapestry, which showed you, I think, one week here, is really a fantastic tool. And what makes it such a powerful tool is an algorithm. And that kind of brings us to one of these things that the Perelson and text doesn't talk about at all. Really, none of our texts talk about that. But it's this notion of an algorithm. An algorithm is just simply a recipe for how I get stuff done, okay? And if I build an algorithm that allows me to plumb through hundreds of millions of records in a very effective way, I have the proverbial tiger by the tail. And these folks at Esri have devised an algorithm that mimics the United States Census. So they basically run this algorithm, and they can mimic the United States Census every single year, not every 10 years. That's why they can get such powerful results and such incredible predictive accuracy. And again, I would encourage you to take a look at that and think about it. Well, I didn't want to get too far off on that, but I didn't want to give chapters 4 through 6 short shrift without talking about that. Now, for me, technology and how organizations interact with technology and employees interact with technology is something I've always been fascinated in. Throughout my career, it's been something I've kind of followed. And I'll give you kind of an example. My two nephews, my brother's boys, both went in the United States Army. They were both Rangers, and they were communication specialists. And their job was to go in after they'd gone in and dealt with the bad guys, was to accumulate all of their electronics, the phones left behind, the computers left behind, all of that stuff, and go through it and harvest it and then upload it back to intelligence and back to headquarters. Well, they spent a year and a half, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, mastering those skills. And so they had to be able to do everything any other soldier did. But think about how powerful a weapon they were if they could uncover patterns or they could identify people. And we've seen this and how it's changed. I think probably the most controversial example of all of this is the use of drones, and the use of drones for military purposes. It's been about a month or two ago, there was a incredibly very touching and very, very moving documentary about people soldiers who were trained to use the drones. And they're sitting back in a lab 4,000 miles away, and they're experiencing the same kind of stress and dysfunction in their lives that people do who are on the front lines toting a gun going from door to door. So it's fascinating how this stuff really changes how we relate to each other. And as I said earlier when I was talking about the production line and how all that moved us to a very bureaucratic type of system where we had these silos. Today, we're seeing more and more networked organizations and more organizations that are really a collection of talent, more so than just a set of silos. And what we're seeing is boundaries, particularly in larger industries, between partner companies, getting thinner and thinner and thinner, where we have people in one company sharing data and insights with another company. Probably the best example I could give you, and I think there's a case there is a case in the textbook about Boeing, not Boeing, but building the Airbus, an exceptionally complicated piece of equipment, and the story of their supply chain and how they had to put that thing together is pretty incredible. Well, that being said, let's take a look at case 19, and we'll talk about it some. And I want to go over, it's over on page 138, and this is in the Green Book, the Miller textbook. And again, the case is called second time around movies. Okay. And those and we'll talk about that, and then I'll show you the files that we'll need to download in order to do some work. And there, as usual, they try to give us a skills check of what types of things are we working on, and then they give us some background about these folks. And you know, they sell movie videos, and you know, it's a little bit dated there, but they're trying to build a database, okay, of the people who rent their DVDs online. Sounds a lot like Netflix to me. And the challenges that they have of building a database to manage that process. Now, again, this is a situation like the elusive moose, where we have a database that's really where we're really trying to build a data warehouse, or use a data warehouse approach using a facts table, a table of transactions, as a key focal point for our work, okay? And they're over on page 139. They give you the scenario, and they give you some information about the company and their list. And then the heart of the thing starts to move us over in table 1 over in page 140. And you start to see something very interesting. You see what we call a dimension table, okay? In this case, we have the available membership plans. You say, this looks very similar to those price in that list of products and services sold by Tamika's Tanning Salon. Exactly. We start with a dimension table. In this case, these are membership plans again, okay? Similar type of situation where we're going to be tracking transactions and trying to glean some information from them. So we have this dimension table or attribute table where we have a plan ID, then we have a description, and then we have a cost, okay? So it's very much like Tamika's Tanning Salon. In fact, these two cases are very similar to about 95% of all of the databases that are out there that people use and shop from one way or the other. Now, you'll see over on page 2, okay, they start to talk about some storage specifications, okay? And you'll see here the plan ID, the description, the cost, and the maximum number of movies that they can get, okay, the maximum numbers movies that they can get, okay? And they have some input specifications for us, okay? But we've got the plan table, we've got the membership plans, okay? And obviously, the type of plan you have drives the number of maximum number of movies that you can rent. So this is very similar, and again, not too different from any of these types of membership. And interestingly, as dated as this case is, and as dated as the Tamika Tanning Salon case is, in truth, in operation at the ground level, both of these are networked firms. You say, what do you mean? Well, if people are trading and going to Tamika's Tanning Salon, they're probably telling somebody else, and maybe they take a friend, maybe they have a relative who goes with them, who knows? But they build themselves on using a network. It's the same thing with this company. Or if you want to see another good example of it, look at a gym. There's a huge, I forgot the name of the company is. This will tell a little bit about me and my old age, but I think it's Gold's Gym. I believe that's the franchise. But they've got all these people, and I'm sure they're all networked and they know each other, or people go in groups and they meet each other and all that business. They build a networked type of environment. Well, that on page 140, the one they give us the table plan and the number of movies, the maximum number of movies you can get, and the cost, and you could see that they are running a volume business. Now, if you look at table 2, you're going to notice that the cost for the plan drops precipitously with the volume of movies. And that's the reason is that intellectual products, okay, like especially those that are not physically bound, okay, lend themselves to a mass distribution type of sales approach or marketing approach, basically an infinite distribution, because it becomes, there's a certain point where the cost, on the server becomes almost negligible when you go from one movie to 6. And that's one of the reasons, Amazon tries to get everybody to buy a Kindle. That way they don't have to have a book sitting in a warehouse. They don't have to ship it on and on and on. And the same thing with music. Music, you can download it to your phone. You don't have to go to the record store and buy it, or you don't have to wait to have it sent to you. It's there. You download it, you put it in your phone or whatever device, you listen to it. Same thing with television, with movies. This is what makes information technology so powerful when it's in intellectual property. Now, when it's a physical property, okay, like a car, anything, a car, a television, a phone, you will see this more and more. This is why you have smart appliances, why you've got a phone that has all these apps, why you've got a car that's got, Sirius XM or whatever on it, all this stuff, because folks are saying, let's use those physical products as a platform, okay, to sell the intellectual products that are so much cheaper for us to really can produce them nearly to scale of 0. Well, so we see over there on page 141, table 2 and the plan table. And again, you could see, and you could just see, at one movie is $12. By the time we get to 6 movies, we're down to about maybe $6 a movie. So we cut the price in half for you to see a movie. Now, if you come over to page 142, you're going to see a couple of the plan or the schema for the membership plan form and the enrollment form. As I've mentioned before, I've talked about databases have the following elements. They have a table, okay, so where everything's stored. They've got a query engine. That's how I harvest data from the table. They have a report function, an output, and they have a form. A form is where I can harvest stuff from a table, or I can input stuff to a table. Now, in these cases, the membership plan forms and the enrollment forms are meant to build fact tables, okay? And that's pretty typical. Forms, when you go to Amazon to buy something, I've said this before, when you go and you buy stuff online, or you go and you join some organization or whatever, or you do a registration or something, be mindful of the fact behind it is a database, and you're filling out a form. And take a look to see, does it control the choices that you have? Does it make you input the data in a particular way, etc.? Well, for this company, there are 2 major pieces of data they need. They need memberships, okay, and a membership plan, and they need enrollments. And so these are 2 dimensions that they're after, but that's how we start to populate that table. Now, they give us some information, specification stuff. This is over on the bottom of page 142. And then over in 143, in figure 3, they start to show us a membership plan comparison chart, and they show us how those membership plans are divided up. In other words, the market share accounted for by each of those derivative products. Now, if you look, you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories of membership plans. And you say, what would stop me from having 7 or 8? Why couldn't I have a membership plan that's just for war movies? Yeah. How about a membership plan that's nothing but comedies? Yeah. What they've done is they've focused on volume, okay, but they could add another dimension, and that would be genre of movie, or films by a particular actor, or films on a particular topic. You get my drift. So you could see here in this membership plan comparison chart, you could see the distribution and how folks have responded to the implied costs per movies that are there. So that's over there in figure 3. Now, if you come back over into page 144, you're going to start to see another figure, and this is the count by state. This is where how many people have, okay, the source of their descriptions, and then we have their newspaper recipients, okay. And so we've got a couple of pieces of output there. And then over in the middle page 145, we have a table where we see, and this is a fact table, where we've collected their last name, their first name, their street, their city, their state, their zip, etc. Okay, and the plan ID. And we have some information, some questions there. Which members enrolled during October 2008? Prepare membership. This is the middle of page 145. And then I'm doing just kind of a quick one over, and then we'll start to deep dive in a little bit more. Then over on page 146, they ask us to attest our design, okay? And then we have some deliverables to give them, okay? Now, we've got some files here, and let's go over back into the files. We may be, I think I have them here. Here's the movie here's the skeleton file for case 19. So if you're here and you go to July 3rd, scroll down and you'll see the movie 4 skeleton file. And let's open that, okay? And then I want you to download it, okay? And you want to download it to your desktop.
You can say June 5.
July, well, let me go back for a second. We'll go back to July, go back to the July 3rd module, okay? And then you're going to see movie 4. This is the skeleton for that file, the skeleton for the file. So we'll go back through these, and I'm going to save this as a database. Okay, I want to make sure I save it on my desktop.
Like movie 4.
Movie 4. You'll see I've downloaded it a few times, so I've got, and I'll put it on my desktop. That's the skeleton. Okay, and we'll enable the content, and then we'll close that. And what I'd like you to do is just make sure, diminish your browser, and make sure you've got it on your desktop. We'll make sure it's there, and there's movie 4. Okay, so that's the first one I'm working with. Then we'll go back into the modules again. And we'll go down to July 3rd. And here's the movie TYD solution. Okay. And we'll want to download that file. And so I'm going to download the movie TYD solution 4. And I'm going to save it on my desktop. Access database, save as, and then I'll put it on my desktop. You can see I've done it a few times, so I'm just going to get rid of that multiple. And it's movie TYD solution 4. We'll save it on the desktop. And I'll make sure that I have that there, so I do. I probably have mentioned this before. That, of course, is Cardinal Buddy from one of our cars, and those are the Grand Tetons behind. Now, go back to July 3rd, and we're going to get this movie ISS Solution 4. I will get it. We're going to download it to our desktop. I'll enable the content, and I'm going to save the file as access database. And we'll put it on our desktop, and we'll save it. So you should have 3 access databases on your desktop. You should have movie 4. You should have movie TYD solution 4. And then the movie, TYD is an acronym for test your design. You remember, if you've been following along in the textbook, you see that where the section where they say test your design, that's the TYD. And the ISS are those information information specifications. Okay, so we have the skeleton, which is the movie 4. Then we have the one that deals with the information specifications, and that's the stuff that's over there on page 142. And it goes, and really the information specifications are there on bottom page 144 and top of 145. And then the test your design, those are those case deliverables. So you should have those 3 databases. And you say, which one should I upload? Okay. All right. Let's talk about that. When we're finished with this, the one that what I'd like you to upload is the movie ISS Solution 4. Okay. And I'll go back to the modules for a moment. And I'll show you where I'd like you to put it. Let's see here. Yep. Conclude. This is it'll be here on the 20th. So there's a place for you to upload. It says conclude case 20 or other DB case we have completed. And we'll have completed 19. So that's where I'll want you to upload that file for the credit for that work for the workshop.
Case 20.
Mm-hmm. It says if you go into the module for the week 7. Mm-hmm. 7/7/17.
Okay.
And you scroll down, you're going to see a thing that says conclude case 20 or other DB we have completed.
Yes.
Okay, now it will be, now if that is a little confusing, then you can always scroll up to the syllabus section of Canvas and it lays out your assignments. Okay, and you'll see that assignment here. Let me pull down. Here it is. So it's due the 20th. Okay, everybody. So that's a good way to see what's going on and what's due. So that's the solution. Now let's go back now and diminish your browser. Don't log out. Don't just diminish your browser. And let's go back and let's start to take a look at these. And let's start with the movie 4 database, which is the skeleton. And let's talk about what we have in here. And I'll explain to you why we're calling it the skeleton file. Now, I'm going to click on here's some navigation again. Remember, we have these major tabs: Home, Create, External Data. You say, could I link data from another database? Yes, I could input an Excel file here. I can, there's all type XML data as a text file. If you have an online database, so like an SQL server, you can feed in here. It's designed to do that. Typically what people do is they'll import tables from another Access file or an Excel file into a database. It's not that big of a deal. I'll just show you real quick. Let's say you have an Excel file that you want to import, and you just browse and you go find it and you import it. That's all. And then it will create a table for you. Now, we're going to put this into object type. This is that little navigational panel, and it shows us the objects that we have. And remember, we have those 4 types of objects: tables, queries, forms, reports. Now, there's some others known as macros, which is a macro is really nothing more than a collection of keystrokes. And then we move into projects using what we call Visual Basic for Access. There's also a Visual Basic for Excel that's working more at a code level. But this is just simply a collection of tables. And we've got 3 tables, and let's look at them for just a moment. These are what were outlined in the course. And we'll open up the table member. Now, Note again, the nomenclature, the authors are old school, so they named the table TBL. So there's no mistaking that it's a table, okay? Just like a QRY is a query, fact, F-A-C-T, before the name of it means this is a fact table. RPT is report. So, you know, it's old school nomenclature before we had icons that were there. Before we had icons, you had to know what kind of file it was. You could waste your time and get confused if you're trying to look at a table and go, this isn't this isn't what I thought I'd get. So you'd want to make sure you'd use the nomenclature. What we're looking at here, our ability to see these things, to see the objects, the iconic display that's here, the graphic user interface is a marvel. Trust me, I've worked with databases before we had all this, and it was a nightmare. So we've got the table member, okay? And let's scoot that shutter bar, let's scoot it across so we can see the whole table. And we have what we call this is a facts table, okay? And what I have here is a table of memberships, and I have their member number, first name, last name, the enrollment date, the street, their city, you know, contact data. We have that kind of information there. And I can navigate on over here, and I've got ways to contact them, their zip code. I've got an ICC. Now, I don't know what that means. I'll have to go in and take a look at that because that makes no sense to me. And then I have a plan ID. That makes sense. And then I have their email. So we'll need to go in and look at this table, okay? And the way that we do that is we go to the design level. There's two ways to do that. We can either come up here and see the little design icon, okay? Or we can click on the tab and there's the design view and we'll look at it, okay? And that ICC little field name indicates how the member first heard of us. Okay, I'd never have guessed that, but thank goodness somebody put the description in there and told us. Well, let's walk through this. We've got a member number, and it has a thing called an auto number. We talked about that before. It also has a primary key, okay? How do I know? Well, the primary key shows up here, and on the top, in the toolbar, the primary key is hot. So every member, okay, has their own unique number, okay? And that's important for us to be able to relate the databases, and we talked about that before. Then we've got the other types of data, their first name, last name, and most of this stuff is short text, okay? Let's click on a couple of these. Let's click on state for a moment, okay? And here we have, pardon me, on the zip code, all right? And notice that we have, it stores the member's zip, all right? But we're not using an input mask. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's talk about this because I want to take some time to talk about what we call data validation. And validation really starts with input. Click on the enrollment date field, and the format is in a short date. In the next line, this is down in the general properties, you'll see a thing called the input mask, okay? Now, if you come all the way to the right, you'll see a little button with three dots. And you click on that, and that gives us our choice in terms of how we want the date to look, okay? But the input mask also controls input in terms of how the data are inputted, all right? We want the data, we want a short date. So when we utilize that input mask, that's how we create we force uniformity, and that makes certain that we have valid data. Now the first step we did, was we utilized a primary key. Now we'll come down here, we've got street, we've got city, we've got state. Now, state is, if we come down to the field properties, has two field sizes. So we're assuming people are going to be using the two uh, the two letters that, like, OK is Oklahoma, TX is Texas, TN is Tennessee, Michigan is MI, I think Massachusetts, I believe, is MA, I think MN is Maine. You could see, I'm kind of going, I think what we would want to do would be to create a table called state table that we could use to look up and just create a drop down menu. Okay. And when you're inputting data, when you're filling out a form for somebody, the more drop down menus there are, the better designed that form is, simply because they're forcing the data to conform to a particular style. You see, what if someone lives in Arkansas, okay, which is, I think, AR, but you put in an AK for Alaska. Suddenly you think they're in Alaska. So you could see where those kinds of issues can come about. Zip code, the same thing. We'd want to use an input mask for zip code. Same thing for a phone number. Now let's close this table off for just a moment, and let's step back and look at the big picture. So click on Database Tools and click on Relationships. Okay? And we're going to see that we have the three tables. Okay? And this is the skeleton, and they're unrelated. Now, let's do something for a moment and relate these three tables. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to assume that the table source, that is, where do these people come from, who are they, etc., and the table plan, these are what we call dimension. The table plan is what we call a slowly changing dimension because it's a product. So we don't change it that often. The source is probably a slowly changing dimension plan too. And I give you some of this nomenclature, so if you interact with somebody in a database, they're not all, that doesn't throw you. Then we have the fact table, which is the member table. Okay? Now, notice that I've got the plan ID up here, and I've got a plan ID down here. I'm going to say that the parent table, okay, and I'm just doing this just to show us how to click on plan ID, okay, in the table plan. And just take your cursor and bring it over to the plan ID in the table member, and you'll see a little positive sign. You see it? Mm-hmm. Click it, and it will say Edit Relationships. Okay? Now, you'll see here on the left is plan ID. Okay? On the right is plan ID. Those are the two fields. The table plan is the parent. Why? Because it's the dimension, and it feeds into the fact table. The fact table is just a collection of records. That's all it is. And it's built from the table plan and the table source, plus other data we've inputted. Now we've got the child table is plan ID, and then click on Create. Okay? And we'll see. Now, I've got these two linked, and I'm going to edit the relationship. Okay? And I'll click on Edit the Relationship, so I get the dialog box again. And notice something. It says membership type 1 to many. And what that is saying is very simple. I can have a member, okay, who has I can have a member, okay, I can have a plan that has multiple members. Pardon me. Plan ID is the parent, in the table plan, and the table member plan ID is the child. So you say, so I can have as many people as I want to have the Blue Moon plan. I can have as many people as I want to have the Couch Potato Special, or Popcorn and More, or Seymour Movies, or Sherry's Specials. Okay, but I've connected the two tables. Okay, and if new plans change, I'm good to go. Now, what I have here on the right, the plan D, is what we call the parent. This is the primary key, and then when this primary key is embedded in a table where it's not the primary key, we call it the foreign key. Now, you say, well, is there anything else there that we have that links these together? Do we have an initial contact code? Yes, we do. And we have an initial contact code, and look at table source, and we'll click OK. And let's make sure that we enforce. We don't know. We're not going to worry about that. Let's just click OK, and come to the table source, and carry your cursor all and over, and then on ICC, they're in the table member. And this is initial contact, and we have the ICC. And we'll create it. Okay. So now, when we talked before about that, about the starburst, the star schema, here we see these feeding each other. Now, I'm confident the plan ID is a straight matchup. Initial contact code, I'm not quite sure, but we're okay with it. But I wanted to show you how we connect these tables. Now, before I ever did this in the database, I'd have what we call an entity relationship diagram and a plan that's kind of like a storyboard for a database. Or so here are my dimension tables. Here's the fact table I'm going to create. Okay. And then I might even write up some queries in an entity relationship diagram that look like this, with the table name and then the fields, where I'd have the query name and the output fields, the output records. So I kind of storyboard this thing before I put it together. And I do that so I see the data flows and I have the documentation. Now, let's go ahead and close this. And we'll say, and we're going to put no to the changes of the layout. So we're not going to save those. And click on Database Tools. Okay? And you're going to see some tools here like repair and compact the database. This isn't big enough to woof with that. Object dependencies. But here's one that says Database Documenter. Okay? Click on it. And you can choose, and we'll click OK. And it will start to create a little report, and you'll see that. And if you click your cursor, you'll see there's a little not spyglass, magnifying glass. I'm an old person, I don't know what that is. And a little magnifying glass that shows me what's in each of those tables. And I can put this into, I can print this out as a report. And so I can see how I've designed this thing. Okay. And if I want to, I can export it, email it. That's a way that I know what I've got in the data, what I have in my database. Okay. Now, we'll also create a thing called object. We also have this thing we talked about before, object dependencies. Click on that. This is important process. This is important process we call breadcrumbing. Basically, we can trace things. We see how things are related, and objects that depend on me. Okay, objects that I depend on. You can see it just gives us that. Is that? Click on the home button. Okay, and then we'll go back I'll open the shutter, and there are our 3 tables again. Now let's look at the table plan. And this looks a lot like Tamika's tanning salon, where she had a type of product. And this is another membership organization, network, selling network of organization, selling network. It's a network and selling a membership. And the description and then the cost. And we can go into it. We'll right click and go down to the design view. And we'll see that it has a plan ID, it has a primary key, it has a description, and then we have the cost, and the cost is in a currency. Okay. And if we wanted to change this plan, we could just simply add in a new plan. Now, one of the things that's a little bit problematic here is if you look at the plan ID, it's a primary key, which is wonderful. However, there's a problem, and it's required. And thank goodness that the developer of the database made the choice to not use an auto number. Remember, we talked about those, where it just goes 1, 2, 3 every time you add a record, or you add a new record. It just goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a serial kind of thing. To this, and the technique they've used here is to have it create a primary key. And then if you come down to the field properties, you're going to see it says, is it required? Yes, it's required. And is it indexed? Yes. No duplicates. Okay. So it says you can't have any duplicates. So if you tried to put in plan ID number 4 a second time, it won't save the record. So it just depends on what you want to do. Now, if you're like me, you're probably not. I'm a pretty lazy slug. And so I like the auto number because it just tells me automatically, how many of these have I got? Okay. And since it's required, I know the records won't save. I don't have to go in and do these things, but the authors wanted to show us an alternative way to get the same effect by having it required with no duplicates. And then we could see the description, and then the cost is put into a currency. We can see the field properties. Now, these are not big decisions like, well, okay, wow, currency, how many decimal places? It's not a big deal, until you start talking about hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of records. So you have to put all this in perspective and ask yourself, okay, do I really need to store this at $12.99 or $15.99? I probably have to for tax records and all of that business, but I need to understand, if I put stuff in your currency format, it comes with a certain cost. Now, there's some other ways I can do the data types, and we'll click on that up on data type for cost. I can put it into as a number with decimals, but I've chosen to utilize it as currency because it's currency. Okay, it's just, but there are. This isn't a course on data structures, but there are trade-offs that your database administrators or your vendor or whoever is going to have to make. Well, then we have the table source, and and we'll close off the table plans. That's pretty. And here's the source. Let's open it up. And this is the initial contact code, the ICC. This is, when did we have an initial contact with them? These are really my marketing channels, okay? Inbound, I would call them, I guess. I'm not a marketer, so that's kind of what I call an inbound channel. And this is, where did they first learn about me? And I've got TV, magazine, radio, newspaper, a search engine, if they heard about me from a friend, another website. Something that's interesting that's missing here is multiple, okay? What if they heard about me in 2 or 3 different ways? Well, if I were doing a form, I would probably allow them to check off as many as they had heard about before. So I can see that I'm getting, you know, some exposure from TV or from magazines or radio, or maybe I'm just hearing from people in the search engine. Maybe I don't care. Maybe all I care about is what they recollect. Okay, that's just going to depend. And a lot of times marketers, after you purchase something, especially a big product, like a car or appliance or a phone or a computer, something like that, you'll notice, start to watch your inbound email, and you'll start to see them sending you a survey, like Survey Monkey or whatever it is. How'd you hear about us? Okay. How long has it been? You might have even run into one of those where had you heard about us before? How many ads of ours have you seen in the past 6 months? This and that. Trying to get specifics on about, well, did they see our ad at Best Buy, or did they go to Best Buy and see us when they did a product search, or had they heard about us, whatever? Because, you know, that's gold, and you want to know. Now, so we've got the table source, the table plan, and the table, the members table. Okay, so we're good, and we can see this table, and this is, like I said, this is the bare bones table, the skeleton. So we'll close this table, and now we want to start to look at the information specifications, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, so let's open it up for a moment, and you'll see if it just jumps up with reports. On that shutter, click all access objects. This is the movie ISS Solution 4. That's for the information specification. Movie IS.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, make sure you click on all objects so you can see all of the objects that are there. Here are our tables, the dimension tables. Okay. Now, here are queries that we've run, and here are our forms. Okay, and then the reports that we've generated using those queries. Now, I'd say again, the report function in Excel is very, very clunky, and most of you will be working with report functions like SAS, SAP, Oracle, people like that, who really can give you some beautiful reports to put together. If you go to work for someone and they're working with Access, it's probably going to be a small organization, but the very elements that are in the reports and Access are there. It's just Access it's just not really designed to give you beautiful reports. It show you how to put them together, and you can get some nice looking reports if you really want to put the effort into it. But most proprietary databases are out there, products that you buy, or when you go to work, you ran into them. They're going to give us some beautiful, beautiful looking stuff. The main thing is to make sure you have the right stuff in those reports, or they're useless. But nonetheless, we have the 4 basic objects in here, okay? And we've got the 3 tables, okay? And the table member, that's a fact table, okay? And we're going to open it up. And let's open it up again and see what we got in here. And let's just look at the facts we have. We may have to do some sizing with it, okay? Now, this table, okay, has one gigantic problem. And it's this field over here called newspaper. And it's a yes/no column. You say, well, why is that? Well, because it just deals with one marketing channel. Now, let's go into this and say, okay, I'm not sure what this is all about. So let's click on the design view and go down to newspaper. And it indicates whether or not the member wishes to receive a newspaper. Probably they don't. They probably don't want your junk either, your junk emails. They've done the transaction. Maybe they do, who knows? But this is kind of a, I don't know. It's kind of a problematic. It's kind of problematic because, you know, again, you're giving them just one choice. And I don't like them because yes/no fields are just, they're now they're binary, and what can you do with them except count the yeses and count the nos? Not a whole lot else you can do with them. I guess that's fine. But what if they wanted to receive emails, or say an RSS feed or something like that? So again, this is kind of a problematic thing, but we'll live with what we've got. But here we have everything about that person, and do they want the plan, their email, their phone number, we have their credit card, the type of credit card they used, and we're looking at their enrollment dates, okay, and the plan ID, etc. All that stuff is there. Now, it looks like in utter confusion. That's why we're going to go to the design view, because the design view can just let me see what I got going on here. Okay. Now, we have some data here that are certainly important to us. The type of credit card that was used for the payment. We're definitely wanting to know about that. And the current plan selected by the member, okay, because that's going to tell us about how much money they're going to be spending with us. So we're concerned about these two, and we want to make sure those are right, because that's real money. Now, we'll go back over here to the data sheet view, and then we'll take and we'll go ahead and let's close this off. And we can just do this, just click the close on it. And we're done. Now, and I hid my toolbar back up there, so I want to put it back up there, but we'll be okay. Just click on home and bring it back. Now, I've got my access objects, all right, and let's look at this very first query, and we've got the count by state. So let's go into the design view and look at it for just a minute. So shutter back, and I want to pin this toolbar up there. Now, let's look at this query for just a moment. Now, we wanted to find out the initial contact code, and we want to find out. And why don't we just go up here to the database view and we can see. We want to know, okay, where are they from? Okay. And what was the initial contact total? And this query is the count by state. Now, you say, how did you know that? Well, I knew that by looking at the data set, and I also knew it because I named the query correctly. Now, this is going to sound like a stupid piece of advice, but if you ever have to design one of these things, or if you have to interact with them, look for the names. Be careful with the nomenclature that's used. Here we have the count by state. They want to know, okay, where are these people located? So that's a nice thing. So they kind of gives us a visual, kind of gives us a picture. But let's go ahead for a moment and let's go back and let's close that. Okay. And I want to get that off there. Let's go to the table member. Let's open that up. Okay. Now, I want to see what type of address information we have in here. Oh, we have some nice address information. Okay, here's what we're going to do. On the table member, okay, right click it, the name, and go down to the menu where it says export. Okay, and we're going to export this to Excel. Now I'm in the export dialog box, and I'm going to find the destination, and I'm going to put it on my desktop, and it will be an Excel workbook called Table Member, and I'm going to save it. I'll click OK. I'll close that. Now I'm going to diminish that database and see if I've got that table in there, that table member, and I'll see it right there. And it's in an Excel file. You have it on your desktop. Okay? And you got the enrollment date, and you got everything there. You see the true, false, that's the yes, no's, all that business. Now, what we're going to do is this. Go up in the corner right here. Click that. Oh, no, we don't want to do that because we'll get all those empty cells. Come to, take your cursor and go to cell A1 and go all the way down to N48. So the array that you want to work with is A1 to N48, and let's click Control, okay? And now we're going to diminish this thing down. We'll go back out to our browser and open up a new tab, okay? And I'll bet you know where I'm going to take you. We're going to go over to Batch Geo. And we're going to map some Excel data. As you notice, they have a pro pricing. So open your spreadsheet. Go to batchgeo.com, okay? Now I'm going to paste all my data in here. And I'm going to map it now. And we'll see what I get. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I want to move what I see, especially since this is spatial data, it's states with an address with a zip code. I want to see spatially how this looks. The table tells me they're in Arkansas or this or that, but that may not tell me everything I want to see or know. And it also may not convey as rich a picture for me as I want if I wanted to present these data or talk about them, okay? It's one thing to see a table of data. It's another thing to see a map or some graphic representation, and we talked about that, and here we are. And I've charted those data. Now I'm gonna size out of them, and this, you're not gonna break it, so you can play with it. And it gave me, see, 13 locations weren't found, but it geocoded the 14 records. I'd have to go back in. I think probably they like it. They don't like it. I think they want you to use a common a CIS file instead of just a straight Excel file. I'd have to go back and take a look. But we've got 34 records geocoded. Okay, and they've got 13 locations. They couldn't find them. And maybe we have some anomalies in our data. Maybe we have a problem. I don't know. But I can put my cursor on each of these, and you just work those out, and they'll tell you person is. But also, if I look at this, I'll just close that off. I can start to bore down a little bit and see the cluster. And so, I don't have that great of a reach in terms of people who are members at all. I've got them all clustered around this one particular part of the country. And so I begin to ask myself, okay, now you say, all right, well, what can I do else to this? Well, I could also take these zip codes, all right, and start to analyze them, find the zip codes, and then go over to Esri and throw those zip codes in and start to search for them. So let's do something, since we've got this Excel file, and I'm going to click off the escape, and I'm going to come over here to the zip code, okay? And that's going to be, I think, column H. All right? And I'm going to click on zip code, and I'm going to do just a simple filter. Okay. And then I can get a count. Now I can put these in I can organize them, put them in, you know, in a text filter or whatever. Not that big of a deal. But I just want to kind of look at them. I could sort them A to Z or Z to A. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna clear that filter off of there. Now I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna come all the way down. I'm gonna take my cursor, all right? And really, if I wanna look at these data, really see them nicely, take your cursor and put it, on A1, and then let's go all the way down to N48. All right. And we're going to click Insert, and we're going to do a pivot table. You get the pivot table dialog box. So I thought we were learning about databases. Yes, we are. A database, if it's effectively used, can interact with other tools. And like I said, we don't have that nice combination of both of mapping and data analysis and all that. So we have to do a little bit of mix and match here. So we exported the table out so we can do a little bit of lifting with it and do a little bit of analysis. We can map the data, that type of thing. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to put in a new worksheet. All right. There's the pivot table. There are the pivot table fields on your right. Now I'm going to choose the zip code and put that down in values, and that's going to give me a count. Okay, and then I want to get, let's try plan ID and put plan ID in columns. And there we have the number of zip codes per plan ID. Okay. Now I've got something I can kind of work with, because I'm saying, all right, here are the zip codes, here are the plans, okay? And so I have a sense of the distribution of them, and I can see plans 2 through 4 are pretty evenly distributed. Well, they all are, 1 and 5, which are the extremes. So they kind of all, yep, we've got something going on there. Now, if I want to, let's take the ICC and let's move it into the rows. So now we have the count of their zip code. Okay, we have the plan ID. And then we have the initial contact. Now we've got something we can look at and do a little bit of work with. We could create a conditional format, whatever we choose to do, you know, it would be up to us. But I wanted to show you we can export the data out and do a little more lifting with it than we might be able to do with it just with the report that we get when we run the query. It's nice, but building some visual acuity would be a different thing. Now, one of the other things I want to show you is this, is if we want, we can come into these, the row labels. Let's take this plan ID for a minute, click on it, and click on the field settings, okay? And if I want to, I can use a custom name. You'll see that up here. I can put the layout, print subtotals and filters if I want those. But if I want to give this a custom name, I can. The problem with the plan ID that we have, and let's diminish this Excel worksheet for a moment, okay? And then if your browser's still up, let's diminish it down. And let's go back to the access file. And the problem with the plan ID, I'll go back to table plan and open it up, is it's not descriptive. It's nice, it works, but it doesn't describe them. So we might be better off, okay, using something that gives us a more descriptive plan ID. We might use acronyms like BM for Blue Moon, SS Cherry Special, Popcorn or More might be PM, Couch Potato Special, CPS, Seymour Movies, SM. It probably is going to work better than just the numbers, because the numbers just aren't descriptive. They work, but they're not descriptive. This is one of the things you run into that you'll see when you have some issue when you're trying to work with a database and export it. It kind of makes some sense, but a little bit of a problem. When we have them by, we've looked at the quantity of the count by state, and we'll open that back up again, and then we map the data a little bit. There it is. Okay, and let's look at we'll go down here to one of these, the quantity of Texas town revenue. This is that very bottom query, and let's look at it for just a minute. Click on it and click on the design view. Okay, let's close this shutter off for a second. Now let's look at what we've got going on here. Okay, now we have the table member, and the table member is the child, and the table plan is the parent. And you'll notice that we have a plan ID, one, multiple plan IDs in the table member, okay? And so we want to say, okay, and we're looking for these in Texas towns, all right? So if you look here in the bottom, this is what we call the graphic user interface, okay? And here we'll see we've got the city, that's from the table member, and we're to group them in ascending order so they're alphabetized. Then we're going to get we're going to use cost, that's from the table plan, and we're going to sum that, okay? And then we're going to get the state, and we're going to group it by Texas, okay? So we're going to get how much is spent by each town in Texas. And we'll go back up here to the data sheet view, and there it is. How much is spent in each of those towns. So let's go back again and we'll see what we're looking at. Here are the two tables, how they're related, okay? And the question was, how much money do you spend in each, how much money is being spent in each town in Texas? All right, well, we've got the two tables, we've got the table plan. And before you ever ran this query, you'd sit down and you do what we call an entity relationship diagram to plan to run the query. There's no point in running a query, particularly if you're dealing with, you know, you're going to work for somebody and they got 100,000 records. You know, there's no point in you wasting your time. Sit down with a piece of paper and draw the tables out and say, okay, and what I'm trying to get. So here I've got the city from the table member, okay, and I'm going to group it by ascending order. So I'm going to put the cities in alphabetical order. Then I've got the cost, and that's from the table plan. Now you can start to see how the power of this is because I've linked these two tables. I can start to pull and call this information. This is why I talked about the analytical cube and how we build that, and then we slice and dice these data. Then we have the state. That's from the table member. And then we can group them by state. And notice as we come down to the criteria, we're going to do it for Texas. Okay? Now over here in the cost, we totaled it, and we wanted a sum. We could have got the average or anything like that, but we got the sum, and we put Texas. Now, let's go back down into design view, and let's see if we have any, and let's see how we did in Oklahoma. So put double quote, okay, and let's see if we get any in Oklahoma. And let's run it and see if we had any. And there, look at that. So we know how much was spent in Oklahoma. Oh, okay. This is what makes information resources so powerful, is I can recycle this. I can take this query and I can copy it and just keep changing the cities over and over and over. Okay. Now let's try Oklahoma as a criteria, or Texas. So under the state right here, you have, okay, let's put or Oklahoma. And let's see if we can get both states. And we do. Okay. Now, just to make it a little bit easier for us, let's put the state in again. So we'll come up to table member and click state. And let's just see what kind of garbage. Yeah, oh, nicely done. Look at that. I added on state again, and it grouped them by state. So now I have how much is spent in Oklahoma and Texas. The nice thing is I can, as I said, I can copy this query and put in the state I want. I can do this on the fly if I'm in a meeting, whatever. But if I have a sales district like Oklahoma and Texas, or a sales district, excuse me, then I got something to work with. And again, here I've pulled out the data, and I can look at each of the states to see which one's the highest, etc. Well, we're going to go back over here, okay, and let's take a look at the enrolled 2 or more years. I'll open that up. And this is ISQ 8. And they wanted to know, I think this is how many people we have that has been a member for 2 years. That's what that looks like. We got the first name and the last name, the enrollment date. Okay. And then let's look in the bottom. Let's go down to the design view and see how they were selected. We'll close that back over. Okay. And we got their first name and their last name, their enrollment date, and the criterion is anybody who enrolled 10/1/2006 or before 2010. Pardon me, who enrolled before October 1st, 2006. How do I know? Well, here's the criterion, and I'm going to copy it. My apologies, folks. My brain's dead. And there I use the Boolean logic of before 10/1/2006. You'll notice that, again, as I mentioned, we've got the date there between hashtags. Access likes hashtags when we handle data. And the data, because they're stored really as numbers, we can use Boolean logic on them. In fact, we almost treat them like numbers. And I think we did that last week when we took the date that the people came in and the date they left and got the difference and all that business. So you can see how malleable these are. I'll go back up here. Now, I want to close this off for a moment, this second one. And I'm not going to do any changes. And we've looked at, and we still have that Excel file open, okay? And let's go back to it. And this is the one we were analyzing everybody counts by the zip code, okay? The count of the zip codes and how those are adding themselves up. Now, I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to take the count of the zip code, okay, and I'm going to remove that field, okay, and I'll just remove the field from there. And if I want to, I can come in here and I've got the column labels, and I know that the column labels are the plan ID. So I could put this in and say, I could go in and alt and change it. I could put Keith plan, and it'll show up as that. So one of the things sometimes you'll need to do is go back in and do some descriptive research work. And the same thing in the formula bar up here, my movie. And that makes it more intelligible to you in terms of just dealing with those numbers. So you could do a little bit of work with it there. I wanted to show you that, and just as well as the export process. And we're done. And then to play some, I'll go out and do a little bit of geographic analysis with it and play with it some and see that we can use that tool. So the whole idea is that we're using, again, we're basically creating, we're using information that's actionable. And so we want to get done. Now, we've got this other database here, this third one, and this is the TYD. Let's open it up for just a moment. We'll talk about it for just a little bit. So this is the movie TYD solution. It's called movie, and that's the test your design solution. Yeah. They use ISS as information specifications and storage, and then the I keep saying it wrong. It's information specifications, IS, and then TYD is test your design. I apologize. I'm acronym happy, folks, so please forgive me. Now, click on all access objects so I can see everything I've got. And here I have the tables, okay? And then I've got the quantity, the count by state, the query of the credit cards in the first quarter. Let's look at that one, query credit card SQ1. All right, and that's everybody who, here's the credit card they used in the first quarter by state. Now, let's go to the design view on that query and take a look. And we're going to see the credit card is from the table member. And we'll just scroll this down a little bit so you have a little bit better visual acuity so we can see all the fields. Okay. And move this just a hair. And I've got the credit card, and I'm going to group it by the row heading. And they're running a crosstab query. Okay, this is a little bit different critter than what we've seen before. And how do we know it's a crosstab? Look up here. You'll see it's a crosstab. And so we're going to get the credit cards, and we're using the crosstab to group everything. Then we've got the state. Okay, and the table member and the group by and column heading, the credit card, the count, the value, and the row heading. Now, click on that icon up there. It says query type crosstab. Just click on it and it'll show you the crosstab, or should. We have to run the wizard on it. So let's close this off for just a minute. And no, we don't want to change anything. And let's just click create. Okay. And then we'll go to query wizard. And you'll see it says crosstab query wizard. Okay. Now click on that. Click OK. And it's going to say, okay, what table do you want to use? And then you just build the crosstab. Let me say this. I'm not a big fan of this. I think you can get the same thing done a whole lot more intuitively in Excel using pivot table. and you can do a whole lot more, and you can change dimensions, because the crosstab here is limited by dimensions, okay, and so it makes it problematic. So if you're going to be using a crosstab analysis, okay, where I want to look at how many how many bags of how many cars did I sell in this city of this type of car in this date, which is I've got a cross tabulation model. Then I want to probably use I probably want to export the table out to Excel, or if you're working with SAP or SAS or something like that, they'll have a little bit more robust tool to use. But I wanted to let you see that. Now, there are a couple of other query types that can be run, and we'll click on that for just a minute. And let's click on Query Design, Query Wizard, excuse me. And you'll see there's also Find Duplicates that lets you take a table and see if there are any duplicates, okay, or find any unmatched records. But again, this crosstab queries is not that big. It's to be truthful with you, it's a lot easier to do these writing them in SQL than it is to use the GUI. Now, I'm going to close this off, and here's the GUI for this. And you could see it's a crosstab. How do we know? We had run the crosstab. We could have either did the query or we did this. I'm going to go down to the SQL view. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to copy the SQL and I'm going to put it on an empty notepad so you can see it. Now, what this is uses the transform. When we've looked at the SQL like last week, or you see these, where typically it's select, okay? The crosstab uses what we call a transform function, and so it says we're going to transform this table, okay? We're going to mix it and match it, and so we're going to transform, and we're going to do a count. That could be average, it could be sum, but we're going to do a count, and then you'll see the table member. The table member, that's on the right. That's the table. That's how the syntax works. And then credit card is the field within the table member. That's the dot credit card. As that is what we call an alias, as count of credit card. Alias is AS. When you see that, you're basically you're renaming the column so that it's more it has meaning for the end user. Okay. Then notice what happens. We select the table member dot credit card. Then we count table member dot credit card as total count. So we transform, okay, and we're going to count, and then we're going to have a select statement that follows it immediately, and then the from statement follows that, and then we group it by table member dot credit card, and then we pay it, and then we use the pivot statement of table member dot state. Now, look, Access is a good place to cut your teeth working with pivot tables. I think for most working manager, pivot table in Excel is about as good as it gets. Or if you go to work for a pretty good sized company and they're using SAP or SAS or something like that, they're gonna give you some real beautiful crosstabs analysis. And a lot of times, you'll want to if you don't have a good tool to use like SAP or SAS or something like this, Excel will probably work about as well for you until you start hitting a huge number of cases or a huge number of fields. But I wanted to show you this crosstabs query because it's not big of a deal. I'm not going to say any changes to that. So let's close that off. And then we'll go back up to the data sheet view. And there we are. And then we'll close that. We'll close all of them, in fact. Now, we've run some queries, and I want to look again at the forms. So come down and look at the form enrollment. And click on, and let's open the form enrollment. And this is where everything starts, okay? Now, this form is designed to have, there's a label. It has a search function, free text in the bottom, as well as record to record. You can add a record, a new blank record if you want. And this is intended to build a table and to just make it a little more visual appealing to do it. You know, you could have a picture second time around in movies with the logo. You could have a picture of your family or something on there. The form might be dress it, but typically you're going to run into just something like this. All of the time, all of us are inputting data into forms, whether we know it or not, and then those data are fed back into the tables. Okay, when I go shopping at Amazon, or when I log in at my website, when you log into OBU, or I log into Zoom, or you log into Canvas or anything like that, it's a form, because we use forms to build tables. And we're all about tables. Why? Because if I run a query, what gets saved in a query is not the data, the code. Okay? That's what makes it so powerful, because I can store code all day long. Data, I work and rework and work and rework over and over. And that's what makes it just such a fantastic tool for us. Now, let's click on the right click and look on the layout view. You'll see this looks a lot like a report, where I can mess with the layout if I want. And then if I click and I go down, I can right click it and I can go to the design view. And that's where I get all these lines with the dots, which are the stuff of web designers and people that want to make stuff look really, really pretty. Okay. And that's, again, you have to design the table first and then create the form, because if you create the form before the table. Now let's do this for just a minute. Let's go back up to the data sheet view for this, and the form view, pardon me. All right, and if I click on, I want to look at how do I want it? I've got the form view with the layout view, the data sheet. Let's click on the data sheet view for this form. You say, wow, there's the table. Okay. Now, I'm going to close everything. No, I don't want to change anything. And I'm going to click create. And I'm going to do more, and I'm going to come over and click create, then more forms. And I'm going to create a split form. You say, what is that all about? A split form is one that's used primarily by folks who do input. Let's say you have a call center, or you have a member enrollment center or something like this. What typically folks will do is they'll have a dual purpose form that shows what's going into the table as you're inputting it on the form. That's all that's going on there. But it's a particular type of form, and it's one of those. Again, it shows you the input. As you do the input, it shows you how that's what's stored there in the table. Not that big of a deal. That's one of the nice things about Access, is it lets you see some of these and kind of get a gander of them. So we'll close that off, and I'm not going to save that. Now, we've looked at forms, and we'll come down to the form plan. So let's look at it for just a moment and go and open it up. And again, here's the plan, the cost. If I want to see the data sheet view, there's the data sheet it's based on. Not a big deal. And here's a report. And we'll open that up. And that, again, now there's been some work that's been put in these to make them look very pretty. And these reports should correspond to each, they should correspond to each a query. Okay. So again, we've kind of seen it's just kind of repetitive the whole thing of, I create I have some dimension tables. Then from the dimension tables, I create a fact table. I harvest the fact table using queries. I generate reports, and that's basically what we would call a data warehouse type of approach, because we're just taking those dimensions. Now, really, the two dimension tables here are the table table membership and the table plan, and then the table source. Table member is fed by these two. Click on table member, and then let's click database tools and click object dependencies. Okay, and it should tell us what dependency. And the table member, the object dependencies, this shows you here's everything that depends on the table member. All these queries, and then this form. And then objects that I depend on, and notice it depends on the table plan and the table source. That's one way to see this. And then again, I can go into the database tools. I could see it in terms of the relationships. And here I am. Okay. And then I just begin to build the table. Now notice something at the table member. We talked about the star schema. Okay. One initial contact code. Okay. The member might have had several types of initial contact. There might have been contact multiple ways. Plan ID. Same here. And I use these then to run the queries for whatever business questions I have. And those business questions are addressed there in terms of those information specifications. What do they want? And again, it's important, and the book and the workbook here doesn't talk about this, and the text doesn't. It's important to understand we have two types of queries that we run. One is what I would call is a regular, just a regular query. I run periodically. I run it every week. I run it every month. Typically, I'll run, what's the monthly sales? Okay. Then I might have one that's descriptive. Well, might be a drill down, like, well, how did we do this month in Texas? Okay. Then we get those that are that I call kind of a serendipitous, where I just have a question about, well, what's the background of the people who've bought these particular plans or on and on. And this whole idea, you're going to read about this, of collecting all this data, is to try to build models where we can predict what people are going to do with some degree of accuracy. Will they trade with us next month or not? Okay. If you study marketing, one of the classic concepts is called the Markov analysis. The Markov analysis is a very simple proposition. Let's say that I buy gas from gas station. I go to convenience store A one month. The next month I go to convenience store B. And then each month there's a percentage of, there's a probability that I'll go to A or B. What we found is that as we go through that progression of those iterations, when we hit about the 6th or the 7th iteration, it freezes itself. You can run it down to infinity and it keeps staying pretty much about the same. So that's a mathematical construct that tells us a lot about branding and how powerful brands are. When I teach a business strategy course to undergraduates, I tell them about this. I tell them, branding is so very important. And I like to show them surveys of consumers about automobiles. Most Americans still believe, people in the United States believe, that foreign vehicles are superior in quality to so-called American brands, when the opposite is just true. Those brands, Chevy, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, have improved their quality substantially to the extent that some of them are up there in the Volvo category. But because people had enough bad experiences, it's set. So that whole idea of getting a predictive, is somebody going to buy, if somebody buys, a heavy coat, will they want galoshes or will they buy gloves? That's the type of stuff that we try to cull out of these databases. And that's the stuff that's pure gold. The locational stuff is really amazing. And again, we have software now, and a lot of retailers use them, that will track you. If you bring your phone in, they will track where you go in the store. And so they have a pathway that they know where you went to and how long you stayed at a bin of clothes, or you went here or went there. And of course, the masters of all of this are the people at Walmart who design their stores and their store layouts and the placement of their goods to move you in a flow of goods on through. So you listen, there's a reason all the candy's up at the front. There's a reason, so that your kids will drive you crazy and you'll get out of there faster. Or you'll make an impulse, you've been on a diet for a week and you'll have impulsively buy 6 candy bars. Or they'll have other kinds of gadgets or stuff, stuff not sold on TV, those kinds of weird things. They do that to make that checkout go a little bit quicker, because the more of us they funnel through, the more money they make. And they walk us through those aisles. Those aisles are all laid out purposefully. And they've done that because they have years and years and years of tracking data of how people go through. And this and the conveniences that we have in terms of like, I can grab items, put them in a basket, and there are a few of those stores like this now. I can walk through a zone. These are some stores are experimenting. Walmart's also doing it with RFIDs. These are radio frequency ID tags. Okay, they're embedded on a product instead of a UPC. I walk through and that RFID triggers a database. Okay, it's got 6 bottles of pop, 3 cans of spaghetti, 2 things of bread, blah blah. Okay, and it deducts the money out of your phone. Well, trust me, it knew the location and the sequence that you got that stuff. So that raises some privacy questions, and that's one of the ethical issues that you'll have to deal with as in an effort to try to serve consumers. There are some privacy questions. So I want to walk you through this tonight, the second time around movies, and I want to just take a few minutes just to make sure that I have not left you in the lurch. So this CIS, the solution, this is the one that you'll upload tonight. IS solution 4 is the one you upload for I believe it's the 20th of July when you have that upload. Well, let me go back over here to the syllabus and make sure, yeah, there it is. Okay. Now you also have the business movies exercise, and I've given you some instructions on how to do that, and I hope you'll get some of that. I ask you to choose 5 movies about business that you think have something to say or important, and there's some really good ones out there. And then, of course, you have the group software projects. I ask you to upload an Excel file, Access file, an Excel file, and a Word file. You said, Dr. Harmon, what if I felt comfortable working in Excel and you told me the fields that you want, and I take and put them into Excel and then export them and import that into my database? Could I do that? Yes, you could. Could I create a form? Yes, you could. Because I've been pretty specific in terms of the fields that I want you to create, not too many, okay? And then to put, and then also have them in a Word document to see it, to let you kind of sew it all together. And I've got some pretty specific instructions. And I've been watching the discussion board, and people are making pretty good progress as far as that goes. I want to check out and see, I have well, Michelle and Taylor, you both have stayed with you, and you both stayed with us here. And maybe you're watching TV. Who knows? You're on mute, and maybe you're out shooting off firecrackers. I don't know. But thank you for staying here. And I've got this recorded. I want to go over for just a moment, and I want to make sure that I'm going to go to the modules. I want to make sure that I got everybody on board in terms of how to do those, how to do the group software project. So I make sure that that's all on there. So here it is. Here are the instructions. Here's the doc. Oops, I have a question. And I've got a question. I've got one here. No firecrackers yet, but the kids are asking. Won't be long. And by the way, remind them not to do that. You might put your eye out. This isn't Christmas, though, is it? But here's the group software project. Here's part A. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. And then part B, part C, and part D. I think it's all there. Folks, listen, it's a holiday. I sure appreciate the three of you who were here tonight. And one of our colleagues joined us here in Oklahoma City. So the five of us have crazily sat here. One could have been home eating watermelon or something, or shooting off fireworks, or throwing them at our neighbors, or aggravating our neighbors, or setting fire to the house. Any one of the things can happen with fireworks, as you know. But you were here instead to learn about databases, which tells me that you are in need of some real help. But have a happy 4th, and I'll shut the meeting off now, and I will see all of you next week. This is being recorded. I'll post a recording of it, and then I'll post another supplemental lecture and supplemental lab to this week. Thank you so much, and I'm going to stop the pause the share, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and we're done. Thank you so much.